Hello.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Free Assange Vigil series. My name is Steve Poikinen. I am joined this morning by my co-hosts Andrew Smith and Misty Winston. We will be introducing our guest momentarily, but first let me run through the numbers as they stand on our 80th consecutive week of these vigils. It is 3,689 days of illegal and arbitrary detention for Julian Assange. 644 days since the WikiLeaks founder was trafficked from the Ecuadorian embassy after being sold to the United Kingdom for a $4.2 billion IMF loan. It's been 10 days since District Judge Vanessa Baraitser, the concierge for the U.S. State Department, denied bail for Julian Assange after ruling against extradition. Um, Today marks 1,313, double 13s, days of federal incarceration for Reality Winner. On the plus side, Chelsea Manning has been free and out of jail for 308 days. She streams on Twitch. Go show her some love. And Jeremy Hammond has been out of federal incarceration for 2 months now, 60 days. He's in a halfway house, and we really hope he gets out of that crap hole soon. But very, very glad that he is no longer a guest of the state of Oklahoma. And with that, joining us, one of our favorite people, um, academic activist, resident genius, Deepa Driver. How
We
are
love
you?
Deepa. Deepa.
Hi guys. I think that's the best intro I've had in years. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you join us. Man, it has been an intense 16 days of 2021. And I would love to get your take from Monday the 4th, the no extradition ruling, through the denial of bail 48 hours later, and how that felt on the ground in London, and where you guys are at in terms of your activism going forward.
Sure. So the story began a little in terms of the trial began a little before. Can you still hear me? Sorry.
Yes.
The story began a little bit before January because we've been trying ever since I went to the September extradition hearings as a legal observer for the Haldane Society of Socialist Lawyers. I've been trying to get permission to get a place in court. So for me, since September, I've had to queue to go into the public gallery in order to be able to get into court, which is not normal process for trials generally. Reporters Without Borders was saying that they go to places like Turkey and stuff to look at serious human rights violations there. And even at those trials, even though these governments are supposedly not very friendly towards any scrutiny, observers are given a space. So most of December was spent arguing with the court. Well, not arguing, but essentially making a case to the court as to why I should be given access. And right until the wire, we were having these really quite hard-hitting exchanges with them. On the 4th, anyway, they denied access. So on the 4th of Jan, a bunch of us queued from about, I think it was 4:15, 4:30 in the morning, and it's cold in Britain right now, and London's always wet and miserable. So it was not a very pleasant start to the day that day. And to be honest, we were all coming out of the September hearings and the way in which people were treated both inside and outside the court. This kind of inhumane attitude, not just towards Julian, who was in this, what they call the glass cage, which is, the dock, but also towards any supporter or anybody who might remotely be connected to Julian, irrespective of whether it was his 70-plus-year-old father who was being made to climb 7 flights of stairs or 6 flights of stairs to get to the courtroom to then sit in a little balcony to look over, or it was for, disabled people trying to get in. Everybody was kind of kept out of court, and it's because of this, you have this sense of, sorry, I'm waffling on a bit, but you have this sense of not actually being wanted in court, and this feeling that you're going to be in trouble for just turning up, because that's how they talk to you all the time. And I think it's a bit of, I guess, privilege in that when I go in as a legal observer, I expect at least, that the police won't muscle me and that kind of thing. But I was quite surprised on the first day of the trial, the day of the verdict. We had 8 different pairs of big burly policemen with, typical British bobbies kind of coming in, talking to us and saying things like, "So why are you standing out here?" And so we say, "Oh, we're here on work," because, with these COVID regulations, they're getting quite heavy-handed with people out on the street. And that heavy-handedness is particularly apparent outside places like the Old Bailey and Westminster Magistrates Court, when they don't want you to be there if you're there for the Assange trial. So Rebecca and I got hassled, and we were told, this is Rebecca Vincent at Reporters Without Borders, and Emmy, Emmy Butlin of the fantastic Emmy Butlin of JADC. And so we were standing there, Derek, there were a few other people, and we just got told we'll be arrested if we continue to queue, and we kind of got into this mind.
Oh
no.
She froze.
Boo.
Boo. Kevin. Oh, did we lose her entirely?
She'll hop back in.
Yeah, because I was really looking forward to hearing like her reaction to the no extradition ruling, because we were all like a big blubbering, well, besides Andrew, we were like a big blubbering puddle of, I don't even know what that was, but I'm just wondering, because I can't imagine having been,
there we go.
She is. Yay.
Hey, sorry.
No, it's okay.
We have weird
We're the good stuff.
all the
You were
time.
getting to the good stuff.
Yeah, and we're standing there thinking we were going to be arrested, and then finally 4 of us got let in. So it was Fidel, Rebecca, Austin, who works with Rebecca, and myself. And we go into this overflow courtroom, which is it's in this beautiful old building, the old part of the old, you see the front part of the Old Bailey, which is the new building. But if you look through, they have these windows, at the Old Bailey, which they've covered with curtains, but sometimes through the crack in the curtains, as you walk along the side, you can see this absolutely amazing kind of old-fashioned architecture. And it's kind of imperialist grandeur, but, and I shouldn't really be amazed by it, but it does look amazing. Anyway, we got in, and we're in this old-fashioned courtroom, which kind of takes you back to the 1920s or whatever. And we all thought Beretta was going to say extradite, because when she started talking, for me, I couldn't see the difference between what she was talking about and of course I'm speaking here in a personal capacity, right? I'm not speaking on behalf of anyone. I couldn't see a difference between what she was talking about and what the prosecution submission was. So if you look at that judgment, she was just in this kind of very serious voice telling us, almost as if none of the expert witnesses had said anything in September.
This is what we said in real time while it was happening.
Yeah.
We were like, she's reading a statement that was written way back when they released the 3rd superseding indictment. Like, nothing that she's saying bears any relevance to what happened during the witness testimony. It's not like she's even applying that month into this process. We were livid. And like, Misty, I was sitting there, or like a person away from Misty, and I thought she was gonna like jump through the laptop to filter through the internet and wind up on the other side in London just so she could go strangle somebody. Like,
Yes.
it was heated in that room.
I when I get mad, I get really quiet because otherwise I cry when I get mad. It's a very frustrating thing. It makes me extremely pissed off. And then I end up crying more because I'm more mad. So Steve kept saying, you should talk more. And I'm like, no, I should not, because I'll just cry out of anger. And then I don't want to cry on camera. So I was like just sitting there silently stewing in my own rage, basically.
I mean, it was just, we were just sitting there. Fidel was sitting to my left, and we were looking at each other. And she comes up, she talks about what happened, in the Spanish trial with UC Global spying on Julian, trying to poison him, trying to extract him from the embassy. And she says, oh, because it's an ongoing trial, I'm not going to take it into account. She talks about the Official Secrets Act and what WikiLeaks has done is this awful, terrible crime. And I felt, I knew I had gone in with this idea that she was going to rule to extradite, right? But I still felt terrible about it. My heart was just sinking. You could see us, our shoulders were kind of going like that. Sorry, I'm getting a bit of feedback. I think it's my computer not being very good. And then all of a sudden, from this kind of monotonous kind of talking down that she was doing in the first part of the judgment, or the first 5/6 of the judgment, saying things like, oh, it's not a political prosecution. It is not, there's nothing to do with, I'm going to just stop, and would one of you take over for a second? I think there's some problem with my microphone. I'm going to leave and rejoin if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
I can just hear a lot of feedback.
But yeah, I mean, we were all in the same place. Go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to say, while we wait, I'll throw the link in the chats for everybody to the judge's actual ruling for the no extradition case. So I'll click through and drop that in.
We were all very much in the same situation that she's describing. I mean, if you watch that video of us, we were all like slumped over. Like, I'm sitting over there like in my rage, and Kendra's like got her head down, and Steve's reading stuff, but he's like all hunched over. Like, we all look very defeated. So yeah, I can totally relate to that feeling that she's describing there, because like, that was the most bizarre thing ever. Seriously. I know we've said it before, but that was one of the weirdest experiences of my life.
I think we're getting a little bit of an echo from somebody still.
I don't know if it's, I got a new microphone, y'all, so maybe it's me.
It could be proximity of your mic to the speakers on your laptop. Misty, you might have to turn down just a little bit.
No, my speakers are far away.
I'm not hearing an echo.
I'll turn it down. Is it better? Is it me? Was it me?
I don't know. I don't know who it was.
Okay.
I don't know. I know I turned down and I moved my mic too. So hopefully we're...
Yeah, my speakers are like a good bit away from me.
Deepa looks like she's ready to command Rebel Starfleet.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, good. So I mean, I just found the whole thing extremely depressing. And then all of a sudden, just as she had completely ignored all the other evidence, she then went into talking about the medical evidence, and the tone of her voice changed, the pace at which she was delivering the information changed. And she started talking about Julian's, the likelihood that Julian, being as resourceful as he was, could commit suicide in an American prison. And all of this, again, the way she phrased it was more about the fact that Julian was resourceful, not that there was anything wrong with putting him in an ADX.
Right.
And I thought that was, in the interests of justice, that was pretty horrendous, actually, to hear somebody talk like that. And then she ruled not to extradite. And what happened after that was when she spoke to Edward Fitzgerald, she asked him if he wanted to apply for bail. And he said something like, he always kind of stutters in a very posh way when he speaks. It's not a speech impediment. It's just this kind of very posh way of speaking. And he was like, oh, well, I'll have to think about it kind of answer. And then they took a break, and she said, oh, I'll give you 15 minutes or whatever. Anyway, we're standing outside. And this was the interesting thing, which you can't see through the CVP, which is that in the court that Julian was in the public gallery, we had Craig Murray. Alongside Craig Murray, we had two other women who were, I don't know whether they were from the DOJ or from some other kind of diplomatic connection, maybe with Australia. So there were those two people. And then Craig and after the judgment, can you hear this pinging sound, or is it
Yes,
just me?
I was wondering what that is.
Yeah, that's Josh's computer, I think.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. And they left the court. Rebecca, Fidel needed to speak to the South American press, and Craig went to give his interviews. And Fidel and Rebecca were told they wouldn't be let back in if they left, because they were in the public gallery, whereas Craig was a member of the family, so he could go out and come back in in the break. And so these people all left because they knew that the press was really interested to hear the verdict. And then this bunch of, I don't know, they really worry me, these people who don't seem to speak the language but still want to take places inside the court, who fabricate these absolutely bizarre stories about what's being done to Julian and intersperse that with facts. So people who are not really familiar with the case get really taken in by their stories. Anyway, these people came in to the court and took the spaces that Fidel and Rebecca had left. And we were waiting outside, and 15 minutes passed, and the judge didn't let us back into court. We tried to find out what had happened, and the judge was apparently nowhere to be found. So there was, of course, immediately speculation as to what instructions were being given where. And as you can imagine. And then what was also interesting was that we asked, because now Craig was alone in that main gallery, and once we were going back for the bail hearing, or whether they were going to ask for bail or not, that kind of part, not the actual bail hearing. They said, no, you can't go in there. Even if the gallery's empty, we're not going to let you in. So we had to continue to stay in the overflow court. So this, I mean, I thought this was bizarre, because if, okay, you know, social distancing, and their interpretation of social distancing is 4 people in a space made for 30 or 40 kind of thing in the past, and same now. It was just, even with that, you would have thought there seemed to be some kind of real message from on high saying we would not be allowed into the court. And I think that had originally been put in to protect the identities of those diplomatic staff who were there, so that none of us kind of noticed who they were, and none of us had any sight of Julian's own expressions. Because I'm not sure what it looks like on the CVP, but can you see, I mean, I don't know, do you know if the journalists can see Julian's face? Because from what we can see in the video image, what we can see is this broad picture vision of the court. And
I'm not sure if the journalist, I know that, where was Consortium News at? Because Consortium News tweeted out that when she said no extradition, that Julian gave a small smile.
Yeah, but they were in court.
Okay, I didn't know if they were in court or if they were watching.
No, they were not.
I didn't think
because
so,
Kathy said they had seats, but I don't.
I'm not sure. That's why I'm asking, because I know that they said that they saw a smile.
Oh, well, we should ask Kathy. I'm pretty sure they weren't.
She was on right before that. she was on the vigil right before that and said they had seats, but I don't.
It may have been. I think it was cloud video access. I don't know if it was.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
they
think
may
they were
have
all
been
cloud
in
video.
like
Because when they first started out,
It was just the goldfish bowl. Like that's where the camera was pointed, was the empty goldfish bowl.
so
Yeah.
they may have been. I don't know for sure, but there may have been changes in camera angle from time to time, because that's how. Like if you start with Kevin's and Taylor's tweets from that day, they refer to different camera angles and
Mhm.
looking at the actual
Yeah,
box and then the court and the judge.
yeah, and I think for the first time, I think the camera panned at least 2 or 3 times to Julian. I was amazed by how. I guess I shouldn't have been amazed. He's quite in control of himself, but he was how unemotive he was in some ways. I
Julian?
was worried. Yeah, I was worried for him, and I was just thinking he's probably prepared himself mentally for the extradition.
And it may have been a bit of shock.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, being autistic, that's kind of expected to some degree. So, you know, that may have had something to do with
Okay.
it too. But I would be willing to bet it was more just shock, because I think he probably came in stealing himself for extradition.
Yeah,
And
that's
then-
what I meant. You know, right from the start, he had this kind of calm, outward persona, so to speak. So yeah, I might. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand autism well enough to be able to.
What was
say,
it like
but
to be in the courtroom when she said no extradition, or to be in that space? Because
Oh.
we were all like screaming and crying and laughing, and I mean, what was the reaction like there?
Fidel and I, this time they even had a member of the police in the court, or court security. They're not police, to make sure we don't get close to each other. But Fidel and I kind of just, grabbed each other's shoulder. I mean, well, I grabbed his shoulder. He didn't grab my neck. It was. I was just so happy. And then
It took us like 3 minutes to figure out what she said. Like we all just sat
Yeah.
there like
Yeah,
completely stunned. Actually, I think it took Andrew like 30 minutes.
Yeah, I still am like floored by the ruling, because
Yeah.
it gives the U.S. everything that they want except the physical body of Julian Assange. It gives them every legal precedent that they were trying to set, with allowing them to prosecute journalists internationally free of any First Amendment or Magna Carta. It literally allows them at any time to reach and grab any person that has received classified information, not even published it yet, but that has received whistleblower information, and so many other little things in there that literally, like communicating with a source about security, basically criminalizing the entire aspect of investigative journalism. If you could, Deepa, could you talk a little bit about kind of that reflection, how we may have saved Julian, but there's still this looming threat to press freedom that this case implies?
Yeah, I mean, firstly, and this is something that I didn't feel on the day, because I was while I was happy that Julian was not going to be extradited, I was not happy with the verdict. I wasn't coming out and shouting in the street, because I didn't feel it was a good verdict for ordinary citizens, for the public. And I guess, so let me take a step back, and my view is that my view has now changed to recognizing that Julian won the case. And that's a big, important message that we have to give to all supporters. Julian won. And what they did, I thought initially, my initial reaction was, oh, this is a US masterstroke, because they've criminalized WikiLeaks, they've criminalized journalism, and the British system has kind of evaded scrutiny for a little while they're having the COVID crisis to deal with, by pushing Julian back into prison and yet pretending that he's free. So the ordinary person on the street thinks Julian's free, and they don't really know that he's still in prison. Your question was, what do you think of the various aspects of the judgment? Firstly, knowing that he won the case, I think that apparently, and this is what I heard from a lawyer here, and quite a well-respected senior lawyer here, that it is not uncommon for British extradition cases to be won on one or two grounds, as in because of the way the extradition bar works. So it's not about winning your case as in a normal court, where you guys know this, it's not, the presumption is to extradite, and when you have the presumption to extradite, you have to find one or the other bar to work to stop you from being extradited. And in Julian's case, it was the health bar that they managed to put in place. So it's kind of like you have some lines of defense before they come and get you, and this was one of the lines of defense that actually worked. And I think here I have to pay great tribute to Gareth Pearce and her team, because they did a fantastic job getting such amazing expert witnesses like Professor Kopelman, like getting that, when, do you remember during the September trial when they tried to pretend that Julian had kind of fabricated the discovery of this razor blade, which they found in his clothing. Yeah. And they tried to say, maybe he was just doing that to pretend as though things were bad for him and that he wasn't actually suicidal. And they tried to trip up Professor Kopelman. I know that Julian's legal team spent a lot of time finding that charge sheet and showing that that's what had actually happened, that it had been discovered.
And then Baratzer turned around and was like, yeah, okay, but anyway. As soon as it was like undeniably shoved right in her face, she was like, so that happened. Anyway, and just sort of turned back to good old Mega Brain there and let him go on another, Victorian era line of questioning about mental health. Like that whole couple of days just broke me. It did. I mean, we were covering it live as it was happening based on the live tweets and the people that we had with cloud video access that were popping in to tell us. But this was happening at like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning for me, Pacific time, and then I would go to work for 8 hours and then come back and do more coverage. And the ride to work on those medical testimony days, like I was just pulling over and fucking weeping for like 10 minutes and then pulling myself together and going to play with power tools. Like it was.
I cried more over those 3 or 4 days than I have in a while. Like it sucked. That was brutal. Actually, Rob in the chat has a question. Does Deepa suspect we're being toyed with by the bad guys in this mental health excuse to put him back in Belmarsh?
Oh, well, I actually...
Also, we love you, Rob.
There's this fantastic activist. Have you heard of CLR James? The American activist. Well, he was actually Trinidadian and then was in America a civil rights activist. His partner, Selma James, she's 90 now, was saying that this is what they used to do to the suffragettes. They would let them out, make them feel better, and then put them back in again and wear them down. And she was wondering whether this kind of approach had been used with in terms of Julian's verdict. And I thought it couldn't be that bad, but then we've seen worse, right? So, but I think the if they do put in the appeal tomorrow, then the two things they will have to show is either that the conditions in the ADX in Florence are better, or that Julian is going to be in a different facility where the conditions are like a luxury hotel. So this time you'll get 2 hours out of your cell instead of 1 hour or some crap like that. And then, or they'll have to show that Julian's mental health condition has improved. because then they'll say, oh, then we don't.
Yeah.
So I think Rob's right. I mean, there is a possibility that this mental health bar has been used to make the judgment seem more humane than it actually is. Because if they'd done it on all factors, we'd just be activists would really be at it.
Well, it seems
But this would really
bizarre.
stand out.
It seems bizarre to me that she would say no extradition because he's in such a precarious state in his mental well-being that, you know, it would be oppressive and cruel to send him to the United States. Well, he got into that precarious state mentally because of what you're doing to him. So it doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense to then say, oh, but we're going to keep him in those same conditions that have rendered him
Can I
in
just
such a
interrupt
state.
there? Can I interrupt there to say I
Absolutely.
don't think she said, well, I'll have to reread the judgment, but my recollection is that she didn't say that his mental health is bad and therefore, you know, we shouldn't extradite him.
No, go ahead.
It was more like, no, go ahead. I was going to say, I think she said it was more like his mental health is bad. And because he's resourceful and capable despite those mental health challenges, and he might commit suicide, I cannot. While I'd love to, I cannot.
Right.
Yeah, there was a bit about the U.S. prison system being horrible.
Right.
Which is insane to me, because in the September witness hearings, their argument was U.S. prisons are a veritable summer camp compared to the shithole that he's locked up in right now. And then they turn around and they're like, oh, he's much better off in the shithole that he's locked in right now, because if we send him over there, we're not going to get what we want out of him. But they still get what they want with him as a remand prisoner with no charges, because the chilling effect continues that way. And now he's just in solitary limbo. Like,
well, I mean, didn't he at one point leak? He himself leaked that the plan to keep him in check was to bury him in legal issues for the next 25 years. I mean, the process is the punishment. The process is the punishment. That is he is the head on the stake, you know, like this is their warning to everybody else. Don't fuck with us. This is what will happen to you. And so keeping him in prison with no charge and with no release date and with no idea of what's happening or when he may get out or if he could get out, or that is torture. I mean, that is a horrible thing to do to a person. And then to put him in a cell block, I'm not sure what they call it. It's something else, right? Like a housing unit or something. And to put a bunch of COVID patients around him when he has an underlying health condition, and there's no heat and he doesn't have warm clothes. And I mean, process is the punishment. This is the plan that they've had all along. If they couldn't assassinate him, they were just gonna, you know, bog him down with legal stuff and, you know, torture him and break him down over the course of years. And that's what they're doing. I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. He called it. He leaked this. You know, he told us this was coming.
Like a dozen years ago, even almost.
I know.
Yeah, it came out, I believe, in the Stratfor intelligence leaks, where
it did.
They had the plans on how they were going to railroad him from country to country, how they were going to use honey traps and use all of these different tools and methods to entrap him, to try to bog him down in legal issues around the world.
Yeah, and they talked about making him a bride in prison, feeding him cat food. It's just, I mean,
the first time he was in prison, when he first before he got released to house arrest, originally, when all of this started over a decade ago, they put metal shavings in his food to fuck his teeth up.
Mm-hmm.
And that still hasn't been treated because he wasn't able to leave the embassy to get dental treatment to fix that, which was part of why they were trying to get him, according to Max Blumenthal, part of why they were trying to get him the diplomatic immunity that the CIA through UC Global interrupted, was because he has real threats and health concerns.
Is he even getting proper medical care now? Do we know anything about that? Has Stella said anything about whether or not these issues, because I know his shoulder was jacked up and he had a lot of dental health problems, and is he getting care for those things in Belmarsh at all? Do we know?
I think
I don't know.
the standard of medical care within the British prison criminal justice system isn't very great. I think there are some good people there, as we saw even from the testimonies. There are some really good people, mental health experts, and also ordinary, staff. I think the one for Belmarsh is outsourced to the Oxley's mental health, the NHS, and they're supposed to have oversight over it. There's been deep concerns over some of the responses that they've given in relation to, how Julian was moved into healthcare. You remember when they segregated him, moved him out from the general population into healthcare because they found some. They found that some of the other prisoners had been videoing him, and they pretended that he had a mental health crisis, and they moved him. I think there's a lot to be said about the quality of healthcare that he's received. The lack of quality, including the fact that the prison psychiatrist at Belmarsh, Dr. Daly, had not informed the prosecution's expert that that blade had been discovered, for example, because that would have been an important thing to inform an independent expert witness who was forming his opinion. So I'm really concerned about the quality of care that he's getting. I mean, his warm clothes were delivered in October. It's now January. There have been several nights where the temperature's gone below 0, and he's still not been given his warm clothes. So it's clear they're trying to torture him. And I just wanted to go back to something that was said earlier in the conversation about why it is that. Well, actually, maybe I'll come back to it if there's a question. I think that, Misty, are you finding loads of questions online? So I can come back to it if somebody asks a question about it.
Okay, fair enough. I'll check the chat now. Let's see.
No, it's mostly just a ridiculous outpouring of love for you, Deepa. That's generally what the chats are when you're on the show.
It's pretty much just, I love Deepa.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
I don't often hear that.
So one of the things I did want to talk about, I have it marked here. I want to pull it up to get the judge's exact words. The International Monetary Fund, we talk about it in the opening of every single show, issued a massive loan to the nation of Ecuador, $4.2 billion, shortly before Julian was taken into custody. That's not speculation, it's not controversy, it's just literally the history of the world that we live in. And I'm going to screen share this because the judge said something I find quite disturbing. So I just want to read this out to kind of get everybody's interpretation and reaction. I find no evidence to support the bullying or bribery of Ecuador suggested by the defense. There are numerous public reports which President Moreno explained that the reason for the protection of asylum was removed from Mr. Assange was his violation of conditions of his asylum, and in particular, Mr. Assange's continued intervention in the affairs of other states. I have set out above examples of disclosure that WikiLeaks continued to make whilst Mr. Assange was in the embassy. The UK Secretary of State for the Home Department made the following comments on Mr. Assange's arrest in April 2019. The WikiLeaks founder was arrested at the Ecuadorian embassy this morning after the government of Ecuador revoked his asylum status. Assange has spent the last 7 years taking refuge within the embassy to avoid extradition, first to Sweden on rape charges, since been dropped, which those were allegations, those weren't even charges, but more recently to the US. The president of Ecuador said that Ecuador had reached its limit of behavior of Mr. Assange, who is accused of continued intervention in the affairs of other states and political activity, which is not allowed while claiming asylum. So,
Andrew?
Yeah.
Just further down, I can't remember the paragraph number, but there is a section where she talks about why it was okay for the Ecuadorian government, or indeed anybody, to spy on Julian. And
yeah,
I have that framed out
was
too,
the
actually.
killer for me.
And then she goes, and there's a CNN article. to back this up. Have you ever heard, Deepa, in a ruling, a judge cite
I have that.
freaking CNN article?
CNN. Oh,
But it wasn't just the
Lord.
CNN article, it was the fact that she said that Ecuador may have intentionally granted permission to the US to spy on Julian. And you just think, you're a judge. Spying on a privileged conversation is not something you should condone.
No, that alone should be enough to toss the whole damn case. I keep saying that. But to spy on his conversations with his lawyers is pure insanity. And that nobody is screaming about that. That's huge. That's a huge violation. And I don't know why that isn't alone enough to get it all thrown out. It's unbelievable.
There's no reason to assume the surveillance of the embassy was related to these proceedings. The fact that his privileged conversations between himself and his attorneys were recorded and delivered immediately to the CIA has no bearing on this. We promise. What the fuck is that?
Bullshit.
How is
And then
anybody
you've got
supposed to
88
sit with
Andrew.
that and be like, okay, that's a reasonable legal explanation of this?
Do you want to read through this one real quick, Steve, and then we'll do 188 too? Because 188's even worse.
Yeah, okay, so
Steve's mad now.
if the U.S. was involved in the surveillance of the embassy, which we know they were, there is no reason to assume this is related to the proceedings. The U.S. would be aware that privileged communications and the fruits of any surveillance would not be seen by prosecutors assigned to the case, except for they fucking were, and would be inadmissible at Assange's trial, except for they weren't. As a matter of U.S. law, Mr. Kronberg set the procedures which prevent prosecutors from receiving and viewing privileged materials. Why anyone would believe anything that Kronberg has said ever is beyond me. He also set out the U.S. statutory provisions in case law which would enable Mr. Assange to apply to exclude any evidence at his trial which is based on privileged material, except for its espionage court. Nobody mentions that. A possible alternative explanation for U.S. surveillance, if there was any, again, which is goddamn ridiculous because we know for a fact there was, is the perception that Mr. Assange remained a risk to their national security. So as long as someone is potentially viewed as a risk to national security, you're allowed to spy on their lawyer-client meetings. That's what this judge is saying. February 2016, WikiLeaks published a series of documents which are said to have shown National Security Agency bugging meetings and intercepting communications with leaders of governments from around the world. In March 2017, WikiLeaks published Vault 7, which contained a trove of CIA hacking tools, revealing the sophisticated software techniques to break into electronics, and described as the largest ever publication of confidential documents on the CIA. Deepa, your hands up. Am I going too fast? Or did you just...
I don't know how I did that. I didn't mean to put my hand up. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
But actually, now that you stopped, could you say, I think a lot of people won't know about the Vault 7 leaks, and I wondered if one of you could explain it to people.
So
Because these are really important.
Vault 7 was amazing.
Vault 7 it is essentially like the largest CIA research guide on how the CIA conducts their operations, like their day-to-day operational hacking and surveillance of U.S. citizens, of foreign citizens, of world leaders. It shows, particularly in the document releases around a program called Marble Framework, how the CIA can go into a computer system and leave a false digital trail that would lead back to a nation state of their choosing or a group of their choosing. The totality of Vault 7 should have been enough to spark an international outcry over how espionage is done in general.
That should have been like the end of the CIA, really.
But because it was
an insane world.
But because it was 2017, and because we live in a fucking cartoon where Russia is now the greatest specter ever to loom over God's fair shores.
Lord Putin is very powerful.
You know, Vault 7 happened almost in a vacuum.
Mhm.
Nobody talks about it.
And even more of a vacuum following that was Hillary Clinton's email dump that even less people talk about. But Vault 7, the other thing that it exposed were the tools that the CIA had. And by tools, I mean exploits and software vulnerabilities for an untold number. I don't want to guess or assume. I know there is a number. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. But basically known security vulnerabilities in absolutely everything that they didn't tell the companies about. That, hey, we can get into your network through this, fix it. Instead, they stockpiled them. And those things are generally considered like 0-day exploits. Like you run it and you're in. And it was kept on a server that kept no logs, right? There is a whistleblower who's being prosecuted for it. But the way it was accessed was even in like a backroom server that was like accessible to anyone, but no one was supposed to know that it existed, and they didn't really have a way of knowing who was exfiltrating that information or getting it onto a flash drive, because the way that they set up their security surrounding it. So these vulnerabilities could have been out there in troves to other governments, to hacker organizations, and the CIA just kept them and kept them secret. And there's no such thing as a secret vulnerability on the internet. Once it exists, it'll be found, sold, spread. They go everywhere. And so what WikiLeaks did is they took all of these vulnerabilities and said, hey, companies, fix these. Like, here are your problems. These are the issues that your software has.
Didn't Julian offer to help them?
Yep.
Like, I'll help you deal with these issues. Like, come talk to me.
But we do have, I don't want to delay any more in introducing him because I'm sure he has a lot to talk about Vault 7 and the CIA as well. How are you today, Daniel? You were joining us as someone who's a returning guest on the Vigil, but also to talk a little bit about the Schiller Institute as well. So how are you today, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you very much for having me on, Andrew. And very
Thanks
glad
for being
to join
here.
all of you.
You just jumped into the middle of a Vault 7 conversation.
Yeah, I
you
feel
know,
bad for the people who just sort of wind up on
Okay,
screen
no, but time
while
out.
I'm in the middle of like a full-throated rant.
Oh,
I apologize.
No,
No, it's
usually,
great. Are you kidding me?
Usually it's like us saying something completely inappropriate and then in pops somebody with like, credibility who's like a good and we're like talking about like monkey farts or something dumb. You know what I mean? That's usually what happens.
But don't worry, I don't have much credibility. So
Okay, that's good. Good to know. You did actually jump into a good conversation though, not just
absolutely.
us being random turds.
Absolutely. We can talk about the turds later, but the case of Vault 7, of course, to my mind, it demonstrates the sheer strategic instability of the moment and how directly linked it is to the case of Julian Assange. Because, of course, it was identified by some of our mutual friends like Bill Binney, and also this gentleman, the forensicator, who goes by the forensicator in the UK, that the so-called Russian fingerprints that were on various leaked emails that were used to set up the Russiagate, I think I'm correct in saying that it's the Gucci for 2 emails, that these were completely likely to have been Vault 7 created, and that therefore they were fraudulent. And because of Vault 7, we know that that's true, that there wasn't a Russian hack. And look at how close we are to war. I think that that's the central thing I'm really terrified about, is that with Victoria Nuland and Samantha Power coming in the Biden administration, you can anticipate an escalation of color revolutions and wars on the border of Russia. And, there's just the only thing that's changed is that 4 years later, now there's an even much, much, much greater fear of China that's thrown into that too. So you have China and Russia are really just huge enemy images for the American public right now. And that terrifies me.
We've had the Democrats ratcheting up Cold War tensions for really 5 straight years now, and the Republican counter to that was, well, there's no need to be worried about Russia because you should be shitting your pants over China. And
their own personal boogeyman. So, you know.
And we're over here in post-partisan land going,
Right.
can we have a free press, maybe?
Yeah.
Can we like not shoot people for 10 minutes and sort out this press thing? Because that would be neat, you know? And you're right, Daniel. The Biden administration is a return to complete national security, state and military industrial complex control of not just the United States, but the West and all theaters of war in which we operate. And that includes now Africa to a huge degree. The interesting thing, I think, in terms of that is going to be watching the Biden administration downplay any threat with China so that they can get back into a Trans-Pacific Partnership type arrangement, thereby ceding all sovereignty that we may have to an international tribunal of CEOs.
Yeah, I certainly think that the TPP goal is very high on the list. And it is, I totally agree with your description of it. I mean, it's the destruction of national sovereignty, which has been the goal of, you know, I heard, you guys probably already discussed it, but I just watched earlier today Jimmy Dore's appearance on Tucker Carlson, which I thought was very good.
Excellent.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's just moralizing and needed right now because, you know, as every day ticks by, it gets more and more challenging. But you know, we're going to continue the fight. I know everyone of who's thinking right now about these strategic questions is going to continue the fight for for justice for Julian Assange, and to actually see that pardon come through, which I have been personally dedicated to trying to fight for. But anyway, I guess what I want to raise is that if you look at like the regime change wars going back to Iraq, there was a speech that Tony Blair gave in 1999 in the University of Chicago, where he said that the whole thing that we have to do is be prepared to defend the neoliberal system, like Jimmy Dore referred to. We have to be able to defend the neoliberal economic system, and that means we should have war on nations that don't go along with the game plan. And he explicitly said we're moving to a post-Westphalian era, an era without nation states, without national sovereignty. So I think if we consider that that's the aim of the international surveillance state, and their manifestation as the neoliberal economic lords of the world, then you kind of know what they're aiming for. And that puts into context what's needed, including a proper thought about Russia and China, which is that they are sovereign nations. No sovereign nation is our enemy. You know, the enemy are the supranational oligarchs, exactly as you were describing.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And everybody should go give Jimmy Dore some love, because that dude has been taking a lot of shit lately and he's killing it. And I know that he's a comedian and he's got thick skin and he's good at, dealing with hecklers and all of that stuff, but he's been taking an unbelievable amount of heat lately.
But can we have one day where a guy who refuses to cover the Great Reset doesn't suck all of the oxygen out of the fucking internet? Just one day. Just one.
Can we change that?
All I'm goddamn asking. Just one day.
He needs to have Whitney on. Everybody keeps asking him in his super chat.
Either way, I'll be happy. Either cover the Great Reset or just give us 24 hours where you're not sucking all of the oxygen out of the internet.
Listen,
either way, dude, I
have to be okay with it though, because he went on mainstream media and talked about Julian Assange, and that never happens. So I'm okay. Julian Assange is trending right now on Twitter because everybody hates Jimmy Dore so much. So
look, the thing that I had to say about that is that it takes Jimmy Dore going on Tucker Carlson to get 1 minute of coverage on the biggest press freedom trial in history on network news. That's
I'm going to name names. Emma Vigeland, where's your coverage on Julian Assange? You got plenty to say about how much you hate Jimmy Dore. How about you cover the most important freedom of the press trial in human history? How about you do that? How about you stop focusing on how much you hate Jimmy Dore and quit being a little high school mean girl and do some actual journalism? Fucking punk. God, I hate that girl. Ugh. Sorry. I really hate that girl.
I have an hypothesis, although I basically support what you just said, but I have an hypothesis about why it is that people are not talking about the Great Reset who are on the left. And the way that the Great Reset is being sold is Prince Charles is going around telling everyone we're going to have year zero. People like Klaus Schwab and Mark Carney, the former head of the Bank of England, Sir Michael Bloomberg are heavily involved in organizing this. And it's exactly what the TPP was about. It's about destroying national sovereignty. It's about reducing the economic capabilities of nations around the world using the system that we know as neoliberalism to make the rich richer and make the poor poorer, and to do it using speculative bubbles, right? Wall Street, financial derivatives, and so forth. But the branding is green. And that's a big hoax that's being laid on people right now. And to the extent that people think, in my view, at the extent that people do not distinguish between their desire for us to have, a clean water, to have good living conditions, and to care for the planet, so to speak, on the one side, and on the other side, the Malthusianism that has been totally laid into the left by, from the very top for decades, since the 1960s. People have been convinced that more human beings means more pollution, means that we shouldn't have more human beings. We should reduce the population. We should reduce the economic output. Industry is bad for humanity. These are some of the things that are coming out of the purveyors of the Great Reset. And I think people really have to question that, because, if you look around the world, the nations that are actually making progress are devoted to projects that actually create physical increases in productivity. Look at the Belt and Road Initiative. You look at what's going on with, high-speed rails and all types of other advancements that are coming from Russia and China, in particular China. And then you have, a road out for us, a way to think forward about what we need to do. But it's my hypothesis that people are being entrapped by the populist, so to speak, on the left, assumptions about green, about how green is good, and therefore the Great Reset, like people said, the Green New Deal this might be a good thing. But the effect is much the same thing that we're talking about with the TPP. I think that can be proven.
When you look at the Green New Deal critically for about 10 seconds, you have to come to the conclusion that the Green New Deal was created by and at the benefit of the exact same people who destroyed the planet and formed a bunch of NGOs so that they can now hijack what's left of it and ransom it back to us.
Yes. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the pretty face that they put on it to sell it to dumb leftists. And that's exactly what happened. And that's exactly what's happening. My favorite thing in the whole world is that, she tweets out about Joe Biden, not being against banning fracking. Fracking isn't even mentioned in the Green New Deal. Where was that, Alex? Where was that, Sandy? Come on, girl.
Freaking dude, they don't address the military. Their big push is an end user punishing carbon tax on private citizens. Like, that's not going to fix the planet, boys and girls.
No.
Yeah,
it's a joke. It's a joke, and it's a resolution. It's not even a bill. They're not even serious about it.
People forget that cap and trade was originally like a viewed as a far right conservative idea, and then Al Gore picked it up, and now he gets credit for creating cap and trade, which is supposed to be this wonderful solution that again only punishes the end user.
And if I can add, it creates bubbles.
Yeah.
What's being done is that they're canceled. Look, about a year and a half ago, I was in Manhattan at the Plaza Hotel. It was the Bloomberg Global Forum. Sir Michael Bloomberg had everyone come. Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, was the keynote speaker. And the key intention of that conference was to tell people that coal power plants must be canceled in every part of the world. Bloomberg famously spent $500 million on his campaign for president. He also spent $500 million trying to convince people to eliminate coal. Now, if you're doing that to the Prime Minister of India, who has vast numbers of people who are in extreme poverty, and the to bring people out of poverty is to build coal power plants, then you see the intended effect. I saw Mark Carney there, who's one of the other key promoters of the Great Reset. He's the former head of the Bank of England. And I told him to his face that he's a Nazi banker and that he should be in prison. And that's what should be happening.
Did you get that on camera?
I think I do.
I'd run that clip like routinely, just like, hey man, I got 15 seconds to kill. Here you go, Twitter. Have a chuckle on me.
I'll send it to you if I can find it. It was I think I didn't get his face in it. So, but yeah. Anyway, that's my strong. I think that now's the time where a lot of people can kind of consider these deeper implications of what the Great Reset, how it's being sold to people, how they might actually end up supporting elements of it without even realizing what they're doing.
Well, if we're brave enough to look down Orwell's memory hole, right? WikiLeaks actually exposed for us all sides of the propaganda surrounding environmentalism. It was coined ClimateGate, but WikiLeaks exposed the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and how in the early 2010s, I want to say, they were forging information about environmental data specifically to push an environmental change agenda, while at the same time, in that same time period, exposing the Milton Report, which is one of the largest environmental catastrophes that have happened in the entire world. So WikiLeaks as an organization has taken a super principled stance, in my opinion, on let's have the truth about what is happening in our environment. Let's not hide these major catastrophes that are exacerbating problems, while at the same time not forging data specifically to scaremonger people.
And let's not pretend that oligarch-funded organizations like Extinction Rebellion and Sunrise Movement are going to do anything to protect waterways or oceans or the soil or the air, because they're not. They're going to push legislation that benefits oligarchs. That's what these organizations are for. That's what they do. XR has great theatrics. Yeah, and I don't doubt for a moment that there aren't incredibly sincere people in their ranks. I know that there are. However, you have to look at the leadership level of these organizations, and you have to look at where their funding comes from. And then you can make a more, I don't know, complete, I guess, because I don't want to put this in terms of responsibility. But you can make a more complete assessment of what the organization is.
So I think that's something there's a problem with across the board in all, like Black Lives Matter.
Do we need to outro Deepa?
Oh yeah, Deepa, do you need to go? I know we said we had you for an hour, but we're just kind of holding you hostage here now.
I wanted to go. If you still have a second, I wanted to go over 184.
Oh yeah, let's do that.
Sorry, I was muted. Go on.
You're fine. Are you okay on time, Deepa?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit longer if you don't.
Okay, let's go over that 184 real quick, and then we can outro you and get you on your way.
Yeah, I'll come back later if I can.
Do you want to pick up reading, Missy?
Yeah. Okay. So, secondly, the defense.
Let's reintroduce this real quick, because right now it just looks like 184 on a screen.
That's fair. So we were when Daniel joined us, we were going over the Vanessa Baraitser's legal decisions about the acceptability of spying in regards to press freedom cases as a decision made within the borders of the UK. And we were specifically talking about the UC Global case, but she even brings up information before that referencing CNN articles in court. So Section 184 is the part that leads into the second of, I think, 6 decisions about that spying. So I'm going to pop this back up on screen.
Okay, now it's not just 184 on a screen, Steve.
If that's not the most exciting intro, I don't know what it is.
Man, it's not for me. It's not for me.
We're so professional.
It's for the good people at home.
I gotcha. Okay, so secondly, the defense alleges that the U.S. has disregarded international law by unlawfully entering the Ecuadorian embassy and violating the sanctity of the protection it has provided. I am not aware of an objection or complaint raised by Ecuador either to the U.S. or to the U.K. authorities. Neither the Ecuadorian government nor its officials accuse the U.S. of wrongdoing, and no account is offered for the alleged presence of monitoring equipment in its embassy. The allegation made by the defense involves sensitive issues between states, including the extent to which one state consented to the surveillance of its embassy by another.
Did you hear that, guys? The puppet regime the U.S. installed didn't have any complaints.
Oh my God.
The people that we bribed with billions of dollars in IMF loans didn't have a problem with the fact that surveillance was done in their building. I mean, can you imagine?
Who would have thunk it? It's fucking stupid.
This is what irritates me about that judgment, because there's no reference to much of the testimony of the expert witnesses. Lots of things were excluded from that from the hearings in September in the first place. You know, things like Gareth Pierce's. There are so many witness statements that were not included.
This is literally like she took the prosecution's case and just read it aloud again.
I mean, it reads like her statement, her ruling, her decision was written immediately after the third superseding indictment was introduced and prior to the witness testimony. Yes. Because the only shred of witness testimony included in her decision is related to Julian Assange's mental state and a tinge of U.S. prison conditions. But outside of
contradicts everything they said during the hearings, but yes.
And the more disturbing parts is where she actually does bring up expert witness testimony. And this was something
because it's that Nigel bastard, right? I can't remember his last name.
Well, she even includes, let me pull this up here.
I knew it started with a B, Deepa.
Sorry to keep throwing up giant walls of text, but in summary, I accept that Mr. Assange has political opinions outlined and explained in the court's defense witnesses, including Professor Rogers, Noam Chomsky, and Daniel Ellsberg. However, I am satisfied that federal prosecutors who decided to bring these charges did so in good faith. There is insufficient evidence to establish that a decision was made not to prosecute Mr. Assange under the Obama administration after Mrs. Manning was convicted and sentenced in 2013. The investigation against Mr. Assange continued upon complaint being brought in December 2017. There is insufficient evidence that prosecutors were pressured to bring charges by the Trump administration. There is little to no evidence indicating hostility by President Trump towards Mr. Assange or WikiLeaks. Throughout his election campaign, he repeatedly and publicly praised WikiLeaks, although the intelligence community has spoken hostile in terms about Mr. Assange and WikiLeaks. The intelligence community do not speak for the administration. I do not find the nature of these charges to be indicative of improper motives or by prosecutors. I consider it a pure conjecture to draw inferences from the timing of these charges or the amendment of the indictment. Finally, the allegations and U.S. interference in the Ecuadorian embassy in London are currently being investigated by a Spanish court, and I do not think it appropriate to make finding of that fact on the basis partial to untested evidence. I will deal with each of these issues below. And I'm going to find where it outlines it. It's going to take me a second, but there's actually some statements that Trump gave where he said that Julian should receive the death penalty.
Yeah, he said he should be executed. He's on camera. It's on camera.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not like something that, rumored that Trump said that we should go after Julian. No, he's on camera saying that.
And look, man, real quick, while we've got people in Belgium, real quick, I got to get this out, man, because Jack Probasic, I can't even pronounce his last name. Jack, dude, you guys know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Has got people feeling some sort of way about the fact that Donald Trump saw a poll over the weekend. Okay, but when I asked Jack directly, hey, can you confirm that he's talking to anyone other than Richard Grenell about this? Crickets.
Yeah.
Absolute crickets.
I think he's just trying to insert himself for getting attention. I mean, this is come on, dude. A poll. Like, he's looking at a
It's
Twitter poll to
peddling
make a
some
decision.
hopium at the exact wrong time.
Yeah,
I agree with that completely.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, of course, Trump said he loves WikiLeaks during the campaign. WikiLeaks helped Trump, like, you know what I mean? Like, he benefited from it. Trump loves anything that helps him. He doesn't, anything that helps Donald Trump, Donald Trump is for himself. So, of course, he loved WikiLeaks. That doesn't mean that he actually loves WikiLeaks and loves Julian Assange and will go to bat for him when it's the right thing to do. Of course not. Donald Trump doesn't do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. He does what helps Donald Trump. Period.
Well, it is, you know, I mean, that's also the irony of the moment, because, I mean, Trump is in huge trouble. And if he wants to actually address the people who targeted him, you know, Trump has committed a lot of horrible mistakes or overt crimes of his own. And he let Pompeo go wild, which I will never forgive him for, because I think Pompeo's easily one of the most evil people that, you know, we've ever seen in government. But I mean, if Trump actually wants to see some kind of furtherance of the aims that I believe he honestly had, but he was blocked in or otherwise failed in because of, you know, poor strategy, poor judgment, then he has got to do this. He's just got to do it. There's like no other play that he has. And Thomas Massie has said this in this particular way, that basically, you know, there's nothing powerful that Trump can do right now for the American people and for the world and for himself. It actually coincides, other than to take this step. I really, truly believe that.
Oh, I totally agree with that. And that's why when I was going after him on Twitter before he got taken down, I was always addressing his ego. Dude, you're going to be known as the president who destroyed the First Amendment. You really want that? Like, dude, if you free Julian Assange, think of all the things that he could help uncover and expose for you. And that's how you have to address Donald Trump. And, you know, a lot of people give me shit for, you know, approaching Republicans or conservatives or, you know, MAGA people or whatever. You can come at me all you want. I don't care. If those are the people that are receptive to this message, that's the people I'm going to talk to. And when Donald Trump's the president and has the power of the pardon, that's who I'm going to talk to. And you have to kind of gauge who your audience is. And so when you go and talk to conservatives, you use buzzwords like patriot and freedom and all of those things, because that catches their attention.
I would just like to remind everyone real quick, though, that Mike Pompeo is a gigantic blob of satanic yellow, and we have proof in a protest sign.
Yes.
All right?
That's way more proof than he's ever had for his allegations.
That sign actually got waved right in his face when he visited number 10 Downing Street.
I still think it's hilarious.
That's Ali.
Photoshopped his chin in his Twitter avatar. It's the worst Photoshop job I've ever seen. But when you have to have somebody Photoshop your chins
down to one extra chin.
Yeah, it's like just one, like.
But so before we have to let you go, Deepa, I did want to ask your opinion about the pardon situation and the whole thing surrounding the Trump admin right now.
Yeah, can I answer that and then say one quick thing before I leave?
Absolutely. Or lead with whatever you want to say and then answer it, whichever.
Yeah, whatever.
So on the Trump thing, what I wanted to say was, I mean, I've been, you know, I'm a lefty trade unionist, right? So I've been surprised at the number of people who are MAGA, kind of really quite right-wing supporters. Some of them with a small handful of them, not all, but a small handful of them with quite racist views following a black woman, kind of. You know, I find that quite interesting. But I think the point behind talking to Trump supporters is to recognize the Trump supporters, just like left supporters, are ordinary people who've been screwed over by this system, by exactly what you said earlier, which is that the neoliberal system is up to look after itself. The rest of us are all in the same boat, whether we're left or right. And we're all getting, you know, we're all getting undermined by a system where when things are not transparent and things are not clear. And this leads into my second point, which is that, you know, a lot has been said about the chilling effect on journalism. And to me, this whole trial has not been about the chilling effect on journalism. It's been about shutting down Julian as an example for the rest of us, for ordinary people, to think that we can surveil the state, not the state surveilling us through Facebook or Twitter or whichever other oligarch they want to use to spy on us, or whichever state agency they want to use. And secondly, about us being able to hold powerful people to account because we can come together and we can organize. And I think that's what's special about a vigil like this, and also about the kinds of people who were outside the court in London, despite the kind of really nasty, quite fascist COVID. I don't have a problem with us recognizing that COVID is can be a fatal disease. I do have a problem with people misusing COVID to stamp down on people's rights to assemble, rights to protest, and it's gone too far in Britain. And that really bothers me. And we've got to, when we talk about suppressing journalism, quite a lot of that journalism wasn't there. But thanks to social media, thanks to technology, ordinary people are getting to understand and organize and have people who are not journalists, people like you and me talking. I don't know if you guys are, any of you are formal journalists, but people really scrutinizing what's going on in the world, which is what a journalist should really do. Right?
I got fired by The Nation.
Oh, sorry.
That it's like in 2008, but that was as close as I ever got to being a real journalist. So I briefly worked for The Nation.
At our protest, Steve made a great point at our protest when Steve was speaking. He said, how many of you here are journalists? Everybody raise your fucking hand. Because we are all journalists, all of us.
And there were like 30 people in media, so they of course raised their hand. Yes. All
of us are journalists. Like, you can be a citizen journalist. All you have to do, I forget who said it. Is it Greg Palast or somebody? To be a journalist, all you have to do is look outside your window and report what you see. That's it. That's what journalism is. And so we are all.
Put that to Jimmy Dore. I know it wasn't his original quote, but that's where I remember hearing it from. And
he repeats it all the time. But that is journalism. And so we are all journalists. And, these people that we're, trying to hold to account, they know every detail about us. They know where you shop. They know what you buy. They know what clothes you wear, what schools your kids go to, what car you drive, how often you drive, what radio station you listen to when you're driving. They know everything. They know what cereal you like. They know everything about you, and you know nothing about them. The most powerful people on planet Earth, and you know nothing about what they're doing in your name. And that needs to be flipped. We need to know everything about the people in power, and we need to have complete privacy. That is the way it should be, and that is not the way that it is. And until we get to that point, we have to fight for that. Like, that has to be the goal.
And the other thing we have to do, sorry, go ahead, Misty.
No, you're fine. That was my rant. Sorry.
Sorry, I think there was a bit of a lag. That's my excuse. Anyway. I think the other thing that we have to talk about is how this judgment, and I wanted to say this before, how this judgment is again another way to smear Julian. That really bothers me, because Niels Melzer has talked time and time again about how it was the torture, it was the arbitrary detention, but it was also the smearing that was meant to wear Julian down and wear his family down and wear his friends down. And this judgment has done that again. And it's also done it in the form of, when Beretta talks about his mental illness, what she's not saying is that this is Britain, America, Ecuador, Australia, and Sweden collectively stamping on his head and then saying he has a mental health condition. And that's not okay. And we've got to recognize that certain mental health conditions are the result of, sorry, I'm getting fired for not picking up my kids. Oh, sorry. That certain mental health conditions are not the result of, certain mental health conditions are the result of active collusion by the state to put you in that situation. And what continues at Belmarsh at the moment, in terms of not giving Julian warm clothes, treating him like he's not human, continuing to, you have this brilliant, amazing, and hugely intelligent person being stepped on by the state for telling the truth. And that's wrong, and it's unjust. And
it's been happening for a decade.
Yeah. And we've all got to stand up and say something. It doesn't matter whether you're right or left. This is wrong. We're all human.
Yeah, I mean that's why the focus on what we've done at Action for Assange is to call it post-partisan. This isn't about your politics. We don't get to have a conversation about politics until we have the ability to look at primary source material unspun and make our own determinations as to how we can feel about it. And then we can understand what politics and policy are and what they do, because it's not being marketed. We're taking the branding out of it, and we can discuss the root issues. And there's so many industries around the ability to politically weaponize everything. And that's one of the biggest things that we battle every day in the active, at least in the Assange community here, is there's no marketing division for the truth. There's no like anti-torture lobby, and so we're 100% of the time punching way above our weight class, and we need more fists.
Yes.
Thanks for having me, and it's a real pleasure to be alongside somebody who calls out the neoliberal state, and of course the Action for Assange. You are just amazing. But
we love you
for having me, and I'll try and join later. Thank you. I love you too. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.
See ya.
So I want to shift gears.
He's in so much trouble, you guys.
Dude, okay, there's
Pasta's in the chat, by the way. Pasta.
Oh yeah, no, I should really thank you for the super chat, Pasta. He says, "I'm a citizen journalist." Said it 2 years ago.
Don't read it.
What?
He didn't read my super chat the other day.
Oh, you didn't read Missy's super chat?
Totally skipped it.
I'll just read the comment above Pasta's because it's from Titch. Hi, Titch. Good to see you. Please go give your man a squeeze for me anywhere you want. No.
I love you, Pasta.
Gordon blew me a kiss over Telegram, Titch. You talked to him about that? Maybe.
I will fight you for Gordon Dimmick. I'm not kidding. I will fight you.
So one of the things.
Dear Titch. Because I bet Titch whoop all our asses, dude. She's Palestinian elbows and shit, man.
So on the 6th, we were at the 300-ish thousand, 200 to 300,000, depending on who you ask, crowd size, election integrity event, right? And I was super happy to see the Schiller Institute there too, specifically with information about peace for the U.S., China, Russia, the end of Russiagate, the truth about what happened there, and then with information about exonerating LaRouche and pardoning Assange and Snowden. So now that it's just us, Daniel, if you could you talk a little bit about the Schiller Institute and who Lyndon LaRouche is?
Yes, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on to talk about it.
It's my pleasure. The Schiller Institute was founded about 35 years ago by Helga Zepp-LaRouche, who I'm requesting that you guys do an interview with her at some point. But she is a remarkable woman who has her whole life fought for a classical renaissance, and really to change the impression of what people think mankind is to a more noble state, so that we actually bring nations together to collaborate to defeat poverty, to ensure that every individual has a chance to live a life of meaning. So if you look at the founding documents of the Schiller Institute, it specifically identifies the role of the IMF and the World Bank in choking and killing underdeveloped nations throughout the world. And the document is written, and like the Declaration of Independence, about a long train of abuses coming from this financial oligarchy, and the absolute devotion to the right of the inalienable right of every nation to economic development and to see the full potential of their citizenry brought forward. And she founded that organization with her late husband, Lyndon LaRouche, who died in February of 2019. And I was just watching a fantastic clip from Mr. LaRouche from a period right after he was released from prison. He was put in prison for about 5 years after a witch hunt trial that was led by the likes of Robert Mueller as the lead prosecutor, but that was organized by Bush the Elder, Henry Kissinger, who was a devout enemy of Lyndon LaRouche, as well as British intelligence, which played a major role in this. He was locked up in prison for 5 years. It was possible he could have died in prison. It was not clear, how long he was going to be in there. And Mrs. LaRouche, Helga, she spent years fighting to bring him out, fighting just as you guys are fighting right now, and as I join you in fighting for Assange to be released. And then when he was finally released, after many parliamentarians from all across the world signed petitions calling for him to be released, he came forward and he spoke at a hearing, which was actually, I believe it was organized on Martin Luther King weekend. And we put together not just LaRouche, but other individuals who in the early 1990s had been targeted by the completely corrupt DOJ then, which included a large number of African-American politicians who had basically been hit with all types of FBI operations to try to get them entangled and to bring them down with corruption charges, which were illegitimate. And at that hearing, Mr. LaRouche said, we have a corrupt element within the DOJ that is committed to their assassins for hire, and whoever comes with the right passwords and the right power can get them to take down whoever it is that they want to bring down. And that until we reverse that, then this country is not free, nor is anyone in it. And I think that statement is from about 1994, and it's obviously exactly what we're dealing with in this particular situation. But to round out a little bit more what Mr. LaRouche's contributions were and what I'm presently devoted to as a member of the Schiller Institute, as a member of the LaRouche organization, which is our other vehicle, let me be explicit that we are no longer associated. Helga's organization is no longer associated with LaRouche PAC. I'm just going to tell you that they are no longer a part of our movement. But the LaRouche organization, the Schiller Institute, I've been a member of those. I've also been a candidate for U.S. Senate in New Jersey. And what we're fighting for is a positive conception of how it could be that we could overcome the Great Reset. In other words, we're trying to lay out a vision for the next 50 years, which is based on a concept that when you take a look at the most essential quality of these monetarist oligarchs that needs to be changed, it's their assertion about the nature of value. So they say that human beings are nothing more than beasts, basically, is their essential justification for doing whatever the hell they want with them. And they have an assumption about monetarism, about how money itself is what's valuable. When what we actually need is a scientifically truthful, instead of this scam, conception of value that understands that the contributions of every single human being on the planet are they have the ability to make advances in science and technology, in culture, in statecraft. Every person is born with that ability, and that's where the wealth of mankind comes from. And we need to have an economic system and that replaces this insane financial oligarchy. So we have a few proposals on exactly how to do that, which, just to be very brief about it, it means that we need to get US, Russia, China to sit down together and figure out how we're going to have a monetary system that's not controlled out of London and Wall Street. That sounds like almost impossible to do right now, but nevertheless, I know that it's the way that we have to go towards if we want to solve these problems at their root cause.
And I think it's big reasons and solutions like that why we see this international cat and mouse game where both sides have to literally like thump their chests into war to try to drum up support against some boogeyman, like we were talking about earlier, because that's how that international system continues to propagate, through literally the exploitation of fear to develop military causes to fight poor person against poor person in another country. And so I think what the LaRouche Institute and what the Schiller Institute do is super, super important, because it's continuing to put those issues forward where you see on most stages people don't talk about things like that, where that's not even like a political idea that's cultivated on any side of the spectrum aside from the corners of the internet and the organizing world at this point.
I really thank you for saying that, because I agree with you. And I would put into context, the rest of the world is not necessarily interested in going along with this crap because they know it's not going to work. If you look at AMLO, the president of Mexico, and his actions, he's been explicit. He is organizing other nations. He says at the G20, the first thing he's going to do is to try to organize other national leaders to come together to oppose big tech's, censorship of the American president and of many other people you can imagine. That's our ally against the international surveillance state. Not just that, there were 2 ministers of government from France who said the same thing. Merkel came out, of course, and attacked the tech censorship of Trump. Zakharova, the press person for Putin, she came out and said that the censorship of Trump is like a nuclear bomb, and what we're looking at is an extremely, in terms of internet, in terms of free speech, and we're looking at an extremely dangerous circumstance. And I raise these people because, and there's even networks in China that have said the same thing, because those other nations don't want under international oligarchy, and they're our allies in figuring out how to stop here in the United States.
Well, here's the thing. I think that nations that aren't in the pocket of the Five Eyes, recognize that the move to prosecute Julian Assange is a move for the U.S. to sort of extra legally gain international jurisdiction over the press. And I think that any country with a genuine interest in protecting even their own journalists, let alone the concept of journalism, are going to find ways to push back, whether it's exercised through statements of support for Julian Assange or guarantees of asylum, or just trying to find ways to work around U.S. obstruction with other trade partners globally. Like all roads lead back to our ability to communicate with one another, all of them. And when a regime is threatening international jurisdiction over our ability to communicate freely, then it's time to put aside whatever national or political differences we have and solve this major imminent threat.
Yeah, and I think it's important that people realize this. I mean, yes, it's about journalism, but it's about everybody. This does not stop with just journalists. I mean, like I said earlier, we're all kind of journalists now. We're all sort of citizen journalists. And so basically, if you have ever tweeted out a WikiLeaks link, you are a threat to national security and you could be detained and you could be thrown into 88X Florence. And there's nothing to stop them from doing that now. And it doesn't matter where you live. This is the United States now has jurisdiction over the entire globe. They can go and get anybody anywhere at any time if they don't like something you've tweeted, if they don't like something you've published on Medium, if they don't like your blog post. This is a terrifying development. And I mean, I get that there's a lot of partisan BS and there's a lot of fighting amongst, they use those hot button emotional issues to keep the people divided. I have always said on matters of war in Wall Street, there is one party. They use everything else to keep us fighting amongst ourselves so that they can have control over war in Wall Street. And that's all that really matters to them. If you think that like a Marco Rubio or a Ted Cruz really gives a shit about abortion, you're fooling yourself. They don't give a shit. They do not care. All they care about is that their oligarch donors are happy, and if they can use those emotional issues to throw a wedge between the people so that they can continue to loot the world unabated, they'll do that. And that's what they do.
I do kind of feel like Marco Rubio wants to usher in the rapture as soon as possible, though.
He's such a twerp, man.
I called Pompeo an end times accelerationist the other day, because he is.
Well, the Christo-fascists, they freak me out a little bit. Like, they're not all there, but yeah,
I mean, like it's something that we need to consider honestly in terms of like if you genuinely believe that it is your religious mission in life to ensure that the end times happen, maybe you shouldn't be in charge of national security.
Yeah. I think that's fair. I think that seems like a pretty fair thing.
The thing that I learned, right, is that Jesus forgives genocide. You just can't doubt the existence of the Holy Spirit.
Have you read the Bible, Andrew? Jesus is all about genocide.
No, that's to be fair, that's Old Testament shit, and Jesus was much more of a hippie.
Right.
But I mean, there is a blanket forgiveness of many an atrocity.
Well, these are Christians who are not Christian.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're an enormous problem. But I agree on this question of the uniparty on Wall Street and war. I think that is so absolutely true and needs to be discussed over and over again. And I also think that I thought that Deepa's final statements on this discussion here were really to the point. There's when we say it's not just about Julian, it's about all of us. This is to absolutely keep in mind that he is suffering and they're trying to kill him immediately, and we're trying to save his life. But it is further, I think that's very deeply true, because what they're trying to do, as pointed out, is to terrify people to think that you cannot actually pursue. You will be stamped on by a boot for the rest of eternity. And in fact, the reality is that his case proves the opposite, because a single man has changed the conditions of history. And it was a subjective thing. I mean, yes, there were all types of objective elements of it. It has to do with the actual technical work that was done to create WikiLeaks. It's a subjective thing. It's because he wanted to. It's because he thought that he could fight and change history on, as a single person. And so we have to sort of give people a view of that. So, and I think that's going to have an extremely big effect, no matter what happens in the coming days and weeks.
Well, the thing that we've always talked about here is the power of one individual. Like, that's why we don't have like a legal institution or anything like that. We just assemble as people and figure out what we can do with the time and money and resources that we have. And in some cases, it's things that are small, like some people edit videos, some people help out with streaming content like Josh, and then there's others like Steve who were willing at times to write up whole articles and press releases to send out. And some of it has to do with individuals being willing to go into their community and be the one person at a city council meeting that sounds like a nut raising the alarm for the rest of their community, or the one person going out and putting up posters to literally put it right there, like, hey, no more torture, free Julian Assange, pardon Edward Snowden, things like that throughout communities, or whatever issue it is that you're fighting for. Just be that one person is the motto that we've kind of always tried to put out there, and the thing that we've always, as a group, tried to represent.
Well, yeah, because everybody can do something. Like it really is that simple. I mean, I know it sounds like really trite and, cliche, but you really can. Like for me, it's more difficult for me now that I have kids and all of that stuff to maybe get to protest as much as I used to. So I can do other things. I use my Twitter platform as much as I can. You can write emails, you can make phone calls, just talking to people in your community is a huge thing. I wish I had some. I recently started making those little business cards that you can print yourself with like information about Julian's case, and I'll like take them around to like the doctor's office and leave some on the little tables in the waiting room. Or I like to go through the store and like go through the book section and like slip them in a book. So if somebody goes and buys that book, then they're going to get a little treat inside. So there's like get creative. There's tons of like little things you can do. I mean, seriously. And I mean, Andrew's done a great job of compiling like calls to action on the website. And I mean, our friend Sam does a great job of taking the initiative. He's, kind of fresh out of journalism school. So he's been really going after, like the deans and directors of journalism schools across the country trying to get them to make a statement. Everybody can do something. I mean, I really realize how lame and, cliche that sounds, but it's true. It really is. It only takes one person.
So something interesting, right? It was one of the things I realized when we were in DC. On July 4th, 2019, shortly after Julian had been taken out of the embassy, Taylor and I did a Happy Birthday Julian event where we took cake and bottles of water and set up this whole display at a 4th of July event, like with fireworks and stuff. And then literally 18 months later, January 4th, 2021, we're passing out cake in front of the Department of Justice building. And it's because there was a group of people crazy enough to say, like, hey, let's chase this idea as far as we can and see if we can't win. So for anything, like, please, if you're watching, accept this as like an invitation to start doing everything in your power for whatever you care about. Because that's really what it comes down to, especially in 2021, because like we're like 16 days in and the whole world's flipped upside down like 19 times.
I have one more.
Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
Well, there's one thing I want to raise is a certain way of thinking about this, because I do think that this international response to the censorship is extremely important. I think it suggests that there is a greater potential out there than people know. And, Misty, like, the US thinks it has global powers, but in fact, there are countries that are not giving in. And the specific, it is China and Russia primarily, but there are other countries too. I mean, look, there's a whole bunch of African countries who, despite the fact that AFRICOM tells them, don't work with China, they're trying to set up military bases. Right? China has one military base in all of China, in all of Africa, and the United States has like how many dozens? So AFRICOM is putting pressure on nations in Africa not to work with China on the Belt and Road Initiative, this vast international infrastructure policy. But this year, after the yearly visit of the Premier Li Keqiang to Africa, the Democratic Republic of Congo signed on with the Belt and Road, and actually another nation that's escaping me right now. But the reason they're doing that is because there are governments across the world who want a future, and they know they can't have it in the present state of affairs. And it's not so much that they're like, we want to become Chinese. That's really not the point. The point is that they're seeking anything that can make progress for humanity. And the fact that there are people who are willing to do that despite being blackmailed and killed and, all types of color revolutions imposed upon them, I think is very encouraging. And I think Americans need to hear about this, because one of the reasons that Americans get to be so bitter, cynical, there's a lot of cynicism in the United States, and there's a lot of demoralization. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people have a very is an intentional effort to prevent you from looking beyond our shores. And we need to kind of open up people's eyes to the fact that there's the crisis that we're in is of a biblical proportion. To go back to the Bible, you know, almost over 7 million people died of famine last year. 7 million people just died of starvation because of the economic crash that's happened as they're using the pandemic to impose fascism, essentially, you know, to impose austerity and destruction in every country. I think that needs to be brought forward for people.
I would agree with that. It's really getting bad, and it's only going to get worse, you guys. Like, I hate being Miss Doom and Gloom, but it really is just going to get worse. Everybody thought Joe Biden was going to save you. He's not.
Well, the thing that gives me hope, right, is Julian's
the dissident camps are going to be lit as fuck. Is that the thing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
I'm really looking forward to our re-education camp, you guys. Like, it's going to be a party.
But so on some real stuff, I feel like Julian's no extradition victory is literally like planting the flag against international fascism. And I know I've said this a million times, but it's not the win, but it is taking that beachhead. It is claiming the beach in Normandy for the visuals of fighting Nazis.
Well,
right?
It shows the chink. It shows a chink in their armor. Like this, you know, this is their weakness. And
it's true, because it's the one thing that is accepted politically across international spectrums, the ability to disclose information that exposes corruption and crime, right? So we need to find other core concepts like this and just start building outrage movements and getting people locally to go out and put up information about it. Because compare the number of tweets and retweets and shit that you get on Twitter to the number of times someone would drive past a banner on an overpass. And if that half of a bed sheet that you cut up that says free Julian Assange or Medicare for all or stop the steal, right? How many times will that banner be seen on that overpass as opposed to the social media tweet about it? Because that's how you get around big tech. Like, big tech is a new thing. Like, we've existed without this technology with the ability to create revolutionary change for millennia at this point. And I don't think that now is the time that we should feel dependent on it. We should take to the streets and say, hey, this is what truth is. This is basic speech. Here is what I find true. Let me show the world what it is. And if you have people across the political spectrum doing that for issues, you create a whole different environment for political change.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, Sleepy Josh has to go in 10. I have to go in 10 too, because I get to go get my shit signed up for Rockfin, guys.
Oh, nice.
I know, very excited.
Welcome to Rockfin, Misty.
Thanks.
And guys, if you're watching right now and you haven't, go get your free Rockfin account. There are a lot of most of the content creators there will have free content. If you endorse, for example, Facts on the Ground, for $10 a month, then you get everybody's premium content. It's probably the best answer to YouTube that we have right now. And unlike Patreon, where you've got to pay like, you know, different tiers for different content per content creator, you endorse one channel, you get everybody's stuff. So it's a little bit more equitable that way. And plus they're cool guys.
Yeah. It has like a real worker co-op kind of a feel to it, you know, like it's very, I don't know. I mean, I'm new to it, but it seems cool. I'm looking forward to, you know, trying to grow that platform and, you know, grow our show and all of that stuff, because we definitely
give you guys an idea of just how badly censored channels are on YouTube. I've been told that like it is a huge deal to get 5% of your audience to follow you to another platform. If 5% of your YouTube audience, you know, goes with you to Rockfin, then you're doing just phenomenal. And based on the subscription count, 50% of Slow News Day's audience is on Rockfin. That's a little weird.
YouTube's terrible, though. I mean, real talk.
I mean,
it's called radicalizing your lane. That is what the appropriate thing that content creators should be doing, is making people follow factual information and not platforms. So please sign up for Rockfin. I put Steve's link in all of the YouTube chats.
Dope.
Well, Daniel, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Appreciate the conversation. We're gonna have to pick it up again. I enjoy these. Will you please let people know where they can find you, where they can find your projects, and how best to support those?
Thank you very much. Well, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Burke for Senate. I didn't know that once you get verified, you can't change it. So I'm gonna maybe I'll run again. But that's BURKE for Senate, and with the 4. And then what I would really urge people to do is to check out the SchillerInstitute.com. Schiller is Friedrich Schiller, so it's SCHILLER. SchillerInstitute.com. We have weekly interviews with Helga Zepp-LaRouche, the founder of the Schiller Institute, which I can strongly recommend. And then we also have a website at the LaRoucheOrganization.com. I'll put a comment on the YouTube, and I can encourage people to go there. We have daily updates from my friend Harley Schlanger, who does a 10-minute strategic report every single morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. My name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can find us on Twitter at action_4 Assange. We have tons of calls to action up on our website right now. In the coming weeks, hopefully we don't have to do it, but there may be new calls to action coming out. So I dreadfully look forward to hopefully not having to do those. And I would like to thank everybody for joining us. But I would love to see a conversation between Mrs. LaRouche and Reverend Annie Chambers. She's a guest of the Vigil as well, who's been radicalized on similar issues, but in a very different way in context and world. So I think that would be an awesome conversation, but it may be more appropriate for Slow News Day than a Vigil. But either way, that would be really cool to see happen. But yeah, thank you again to everybody for helping out with the Vigil.
Are you going to tell us where we can find you? Because I didn't get my jazz hands.
Yeah, you did. You missed it.
Oh, wait. I missed it? Okay, do it again. Just for me. One time. Come on. Thank you. Thank you. Makes my day. Okay, so I'm Misty Winston. You can find me on Twitter at Sarcasm Stardust. I also have a show with my friend Jesse called Facts on the Ground. We're getting ready to join Rockfin. So like Steve said, go create your Rockfin account. Yeah, thanks everybody in the chat. You guys are amazing. And Pasta said they're going live pretty much as soon as we wrap up here. So if you guys want to go jump over on Convo Couch, you could do that. And yeah, I think that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting to say something, but fuck it. I'll say it next
We
time.
should pitch Susie's project too.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna do.
Project X is coming out in 2 hours.
2 hours,
Look up
5 o'clock
Susie
Eastern.
Dawson on YouTube and follow that, and in 2 hours watch it. I don't know what it is, and I'm really excited because I'm really glad I didn't find out what it is, because that's really cool. But I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
I know what it is, and I'm not telling.
I don't want to know. I want to just find out. I love these things. It's super exciting.
My name is Steve Boykin, and I host a show called Slow News Day. You should be watching that on the Rockfin. You can also catch it on D Live and Odyssey, and I suppose YouTube, for as long as they, inexplicably still have me on the platform. I guess for now they're satisfied with yanking my subscribers, rolling back my view counts, and demonetizing my videos. But fuck them. Tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern, at 10 a.m. Pacific, Richard Gage, founder of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, will be on their program discussing the documentary film 7, which you should all immediately go out and watch. As well as whatever other tangent we get on. I am so excited about this. I'm stoked. Really looking forward to it. And make sure you guys are there for that. That is going to be one hell of a show. I have a website, slownewsdayshow.com, that I never promote. I also have a Discord server that I never promote because I'm brilliant at this. Just thanks so much to Daniel Burke, to Deepa Driver, Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos, my co-hosts, everyone who helped us get to DC. Again, man, I can't thank you guys enough. I can't believe it's been like 10 days since we were at ground zero for a real life psyop. That was hectic. It was. Love you guys. We'll see you soon. Go check out Susie's thing in 2 hours.
I put it in all the chats, and then Lee Stranahan was on, so I put it in Populous TV's chat too.
Good luck to us all.